Thank you for joining us. Another Finding God in the World of Video Games broadcast. And if you have not yet allowed the glorious chaos that is Fall Guys to grace your console or PC, you should go take care of that, like right now.
I mean, what are you still doing here? Go.
Well, maybe
get out of here.
Don't go. Don't go yet. Maybe finish watching this video and then go. But this game is seriously worth a play and definitely worth your time. It's basically an epic combination of Wipeout and Takeshi's Castle, which is better known in America as MXC, Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. It's overflowing with cute and silly characters, and then it's mixed with this unforgiving online battle royale tournament that pits 60 people from all over the world against each other until there is only one winner. It's fun, it's easy to pick up and play, and it's seriously addictive. You have been warned.
I love how simple this game is to just pick up and play. But just because the game looks easy doesn't mean that it is, okay?
Well, the bright, silly characters and the simple gameplay controls may be a huge part of the game's draw, but they are also exceptionally deceptive. Make no mistake about it. This is a true battle royale, winner-take-all, no-holds-barred struggle to survive, in which there can be only one player standing tall at the end, Highlander style. You compete through multiple progressively difficult minigame challenges as your initial group of 60 participants is whittled down to a handful of characters, culminating in one final challenge to determine who was both lucky enough and skillful enough to claim the crown at the end.
Which, to this point, has never been, either of us.
No, not so much.
Not at all.
But, the challenge of the game isn't necessarily in the individual mini-games themselves, although it can be a little bit frustrating when you find yourself caught in a fan blade over and over and over until you're eliminated. The real difficulty is actually in the exceptionally unpredictable behaviors of your fellow participants, who either intentionally or accidentally will get in your way, cause you to fall, get you stuck in the exact same predicament that they're trapped in. And if played alone, I have no doubt that every participant would easily reach the crown at the end, with maybe only a few trial and error moments. But the complexity is derived from the crowded battlefield of people who are trying to capture the exact same prize, and will stop at nothing to do so, because in the world of Fall Guys, there are no rules.
And this makes me think a lot about how life can be a lot like this as well, and it seems even more so over the last several years, right?
Well, everyone is just trying to grasp that brass ring and get to the good life and find a way to reach their happy place. And there's nothing wrong with any of those pursuits, but the problem quickly becomes that in doing so, everyone is just cramming themselves through the exact same doorway, trying to reach the exact same place and often trampling all over each other in the process.
Well, this is not the race that we were designed to run, and yet our supposedly civilized culture quickly devolves in a survival of the fittest mentality as soon as, like the toilet paper supply gets a little bit short at the grocery store.
I think we all saw that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the real issue at play here, the seemingly paradoxical challenge of pursuing our own best interests while still putting others' needs first, the way that Christ directed us. And Jesus addressed this exact issue when sharing the very commonly known, but unfortunately poorly understood story of the Good Samaritan. And if we dig deeper into this, we'll find some very relevant answers to all of these challenges that surround us on a daily basis. In Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 29, we find the story of the Good Samaritan, and it begins with a question asked by a lawyer, which at that time it wasn't a lawyer the way that we think about it. It's a lawyer in terms of somebody who is interpreting the biblical law. So they come to Jesus and they ask him, "What shall I do to inherit eternal life?" And when Jesus asks him, well, what do you think it means? He says, well, love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, that's right. Do this and you will live. And then he asked the question that we're going to try to answer here, who is my neighbor? And I think it's a fair question that we're asking probably now more than ever. Who is our neighbor? And how can we be a good neighbor to them? What does this truly mean to me and how I live my life? And to answer this, Jesus shares an example that is just as appropriate, maybe more appropriate now, as it was when he told the story 2,000 years ago. And as he continues down in verses 30 through 37, we see the very famous story of the Good Samaritan. Now, I'm not going to read it all here, but we're going to break this down for you. We find this victim, this is a Jewish victim, laying on the side of the road. He's been stripped of all his belongings and his health. And you'll see, if you read through it, both organized religion in the form of the priest, as well as the local government of the Jewish people, which was the Levite, failed this victim. His only hope was in this unnamed Samaritan. If you're not aware of what a Samaritan was, and more importantly, what this represented, the Bible sheds some light on this as well. See, the Jews and the Samaritans occupied the same area of the Middle East and were literally neighbors. But their relations were anything but neighborly. We can see that reflected in the dealings of Christ with the unnamed woman at the well, when we see in John chapter 4. And when he talks to this woman, she's surprised. And she says, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." And then later on, we find out why. Whenever she's talking to Jesus and she says, "Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship." The Jews had a clear prejudicial bias against the people of Samaria. And there's a massive breakdown in how each of them viewed their worship of God. For the Jews, the Samaritans were essentially a pagan offshoot of their own beliefs, a difference so significant that Jews were not to be in business with them, they weren't to associate with them, or even converse with them. And yet in this example, it was someone with such a clear and obvious division in the most personal of beliefs that was the only one who would help this wounded stranger.
Now, Jesus is using this tragic circumstance to explain what being a good neighbor truly looks like. But even more important is the identity of who the victim was that was being helped. When we consider who our neighbor is, let's consider that Jesus was truly saying here, in this case of the Jewish victim and the Samaritan who rescued them.
So we see, as Jesus is giving us a very clear example through the story of the Good Samaritan, who our neighbor is. Our neighbor includes the person who disagrees with us on any matter, even those of internal significance. Our neighbor includes the person who worships differently than us, possibly in a way that offends us. Our neighbor includes the person who openly opposes us and all that we stand for. It includes the person who would never have helped us if the tables were turned. Our neighbor includes the person who may have brought this on themselves through carelessness or poor decisions. Our neighbor, bottom line, is the person who needs us, whoever they are. The person who's been hurt, who is in pain, the person who is helpless and needs to be defended no matter what they look like, where they live, who they worship, how they choose to worship them, or any other factors. And before anyone takes umbrage with any of those statements, let me remind you that the Jewish victim in this scenario represented all of these things to the Good Samaritan, and he helped them anyways. This victim was diametrically opposed to the Samaritan benefactor in every way a person could be. And yet the Samaritan saw only their need, not their race, not their political ideology, not their religious views, certainly not their status as someone who was on the opposite side of a very personal war. The Samaritan saw the robbery victim the way that Christ saw them, as one of his children, needing help, support, safety, and care. And that is the real world lesson here. Unfortunately, just like we see in Fall Guys, the world around us tends to be a chaotic free-for-all, with fragile partnerships that break down as soon as we see the slightest deviation in our views or values, or as soon as, honestly, it doesn't benefit us anymore.
Jesus didn't just ask us to do better. He didn't ask us to merely care more or simply send up positive vibes. He commanded us to go and do likewise, to actually go and help those who have been marginalized, hurt, held down, or broken by the world around them, to change their narrative from victim to survivor, and maybe even save their lives in the process.
In the world we're currently living in, we don't have to look far to find those who are hurting and need to feel our arms around them as we carry them to the help that they desperately need. Everywhere we look, we can see hurting people, scared people, damaged people, all trying to be heard and supported in their time of need. Will we go and do likewise? Or are we no better than the priest or the Levite who saw the need but kept walking by? Just like in Fall Guys, there's a crown at the end of this race as well. Talks about that in James chapter 1 verse 12. But this one does not go to the one who ignored those who are struggling and hurting on their way to the top. It goes to the ones who made themselves last so others could be first.